We're going to be celebrating our water communion in the service in a little bit, but first, thank you for being here for this special last summer forum. We have our wonderful summer intern, Charlie, with us today to offer what will be the capstone of their experience with us over the summer. So thanks for being here to celebrate their work with us and to be part of this moment of continuing to build beloved community together. Charlie is a Smith student who had the opportunity to connect with us through Tess. Tess is a longtime family friend, and to do an internship that is funded by Smith to explore Charlie's professional interests and whatever they might be. And so we worked together last May to craft an internship around specifically exploring our widening the circle of concern work at UUCB. Charlie's interested in how does DEI work happen in a church setting, in a nonprofit setting that's a little different than some others. So I was really thrilled at Charlie's interest and been just a pleasure getting to know them over the summer. And I think you'll have a really enjoyable conversation now. So will you welcome Charlie?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Marcus. Like you mentioned, I'm Charlie. Hello to my Zoom people and my in-person people. And I am just really grateful to be here with you all today. So I just wanted to start with a little bit of background about me. And Marcus mentioned some, but I was originally born in Colorado, but the Bay Area has been my home since I was 10. I went to Berkeley High. And so through my studies, I had really amazing teachers and was given a kind of awareness of social justice through my curriculum. And I became really interested in the relationship between justice and institutions and kind of what it means to be in collective space together, working to do good, whatever that might mean. And so I initially went in as a government major at Smith and quickly realized that it wasn't necessarily the pathway I wanted to explore the work I wanted to do. And then I found American Studies, and it sort of expanded my understanding of what it means for those two things to be in relationship, and gave me a lot of insight into how I might want to move through the world as I transition out of school and kind of into my broader career interests. And so I was just delighted when I initially came in as childcare for UU earlier this year. I don't have much of a religious background, but I've always had really strong values, and that's something that I try to lead with in my interactions always. But having an opportunity to look at how collective action is done in a space that didn't bring people together because of education or income level, but rather because of the shared work of wanting to find spirit and wanting to explore what it means to move through the world and find higher power. Um, and so it has felt really incredible to have an opportunity to engage with these topics in a way that didn't just feel like it was being a hypothetical or something that was intellectual, and kind of bringing in the fact that these are real stories and real people. And so in terms of today's title, Making Room for the Stories We Don't See, I wanted to kind of talk about how, as someone who doesn't have much UU background until this summer, what beloved community has looked like since the time that I've spent here, and kind of what that broader idea has meant to me. And that was an idea that I was introduced to through my Widening the Circle work, and is something that I just have felt is really missing in some of the other spaces in which I've approached this sort of learning, such as my school, because I think in that sort of space, people they're looking to get something for themselves as well as offer something. And I think that the motivations behind UUCB felt really special to me, and I wanted to learn more. And so I'm grateful that I didn't just stick with childcare and have quickly run into a bunch of other amazing projects and things here. And so I wanted to kind of start together with this idea of beloved community and having a discussion with everyone, both virtual and in person, And to start, I wanted to talk about some examples that I've seen of what beloved community looks like at UUCB. And the first I wanted to mention, for those who may know and for those who may not, Camille Parker, in part of the literature, film, drama, and music contingent of the Social Justice Committee, created what's called MOBs, or Moments of Awareness of Unconscious Bias. And this is something that was also adopted by the Working to Overcome White Supremacy group. And there was something that felt really meaningful about providing a opportunity for people to come together and talk about things they might not have explored within themselves or thought patterns that they might want to change and work on kind of progressing through. And then another example that I have witnessed that is a little more in the kind of visual aspect, as all of this beautification is going on and all of these efforts are happening, I have really enjoyed seeing the visual cues of inclusion, such as the Black Lives Matter banner and the LGBTQ flags in the atrium. While I think that these two examples take different approaches, I think that they work within a shared goal. And I was wondering if anyone else had some insights into what it means to be in beloved community and how that shows up at UUCB. So I'd happily take hands if that resonates with anyone, or if you have anything that you'd like to add. Virtual or in person, this is open to anyone. In the back on the right. I think we're going to try to do that with festival care. Absolutely. Pastoral care, and then work in the services and quiet actions behind the scenes. That is what someone shared. Is there anyone on Zoom who has something that they might want to share?
I like the fact that the music has really reflected a range of stories, of compositional stories. That's been very wonderful to me. Yeah, so just let the room know if they can't hear me, that it's music for me.
They can hear you, and I will still reiterate that it is music. And I saw one more hand in the back. Would you like to speak to this as well?
Yes, I'm fairly new here. I'm here. I'm thinking about it. I remember coming to my but we don't have to go to the time. So, this is change. So anyway, I think it's a very
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And to reiterate for the Zoom people, someone was sharing that they are also new to this community within the past year, and the idea of beloved community was resonating. And so I'm really glad that we get to kind of explore this together today. So I wanted to bring in next this sort of idea of story and the way that it connects to being in beloved community. And the way I wanted to do this was kind of using myself as an example. And so first, I want to define story for us, because I think there can be sort of a variety of meanings. But in the case of today, I wanted to define story as memories, lived experiences, strengths, and places of tenderness, the things that we hold with us, whether they're seen or not seen, that make up who we are and how we move through the world and where we find safety. And so there are some stories within myself that I can, with somewhat reliable accuracy, assume that people can read from me visually. There are things that have visual cues, and this might not always be the case, but for myself, I can typically expect that I will be perceived as a young adult. I'm a feminine person, and I have white skin, for example. Those are things that people can get some sense of how I move through the world from looking at me. But like everyone else, I also have unseen stories, and these things inform my day-to-day quality of life and how I show up in beloved community. And the reason I chose to highlight the LGBTQ pride flags in the atrium is because as someone who is part of that community, having that immediate visual cue shows me that even if I choose not to share my own story, or if that's not something that's been disclosed, that it has been considered and that people want to show me that stories like mine are welcome in this space. And not that having the visual cue is everything, but it is definitely powerful. And so that is sort of an untold story I hold that I find a lot of strength and joy and pride in. But I also have invisible stories that feel more like works in progress. And they're not necessarily things that I feel like are typically associated with my age group. And in particular, for the past 3 years, I have been struggling with chronic illness and pain that at times has been incredibly debilitating. I actually ended up taking a step back from school this past spring semester to prioritize my health and to figure out how I could move through the world more easily. And I only received my most recent diagnosis just a couple weeks ago. And it's the reason that I'm not standing for this presentation today in order to take care of my heart. And so this idea of the UU interdependent web of which we're all a part, there's a way that I feel like our individual stories function very similarly, where there's a web inside of each person that has the walks of life that are both visible and invisible that we each hold. And I also want to acknowledge that these have a relationship to one another, both because they are mine, but because of the kind of society we live in and how we move through the world, given that. While my disability is often burdensome, some of my other stories carry social advantages that impact my access and therefore the outcomes I have given my health issues. Because of my skin tone and my body size, I have received fewer barriers to having my conditions taken seriously and receiving medical care. And despite my limited work ability, I am amazingly supported by chosen family who are in the room with us today, who have welcomed me into their home and ensured that my needs are met as I get on my feet to understand what it means to have a chronic disability as I come into young adulthood. And the reason that I bring this up is, one, to share with you some of myself, but also to be real in the fact that despite the widespread warmth that I have experienced while being here, I really found myself wanting to show up to services and other times where we were coming together, but I started to doubt myself or feared that if I wasn't at my absolute best, or if I wasn't not having any flare-ups with my symptoms that day, to not show up at all. And I think that that's an experience I wonder if other people can relate to, even if your story might not look like mine, what it means to not be sure if you can come as your full self into spaces where you want to be seen and cared for and in community. I was apprehensive to show my vulnerabilities, and being in school sort of taught me that those were not welcomed. I could study these things, but if I was actively living them, there wasn't really room for that. And so it wasn't until I began shadowing a variety of social justice and widening the circle committee meetings, and I was incredibly struck by people's approach to check-ins. It sounds simple, it sounds small, it's the kind of introduction, getting people warmed up for the other work of social justice initiatives at UUCB. But people were real in their answers, or at least it felt real to me. I can't speak to their experience, but I heard people feeling overwhelmed with projects, or getting over a cold, or having limited energy for how long they showed up to a meeting. And hearing those check-ins and watching the other people at these meetings meet them with warmth and without judgment, to me felt really inspiring and felt like a root of beloved community. And I think that I hope through my own experience and through these observations, we can kind of expand what it means to be doing the work of beloved community and how social justice relates to this. Oh, I'm a little nervous. Um, I think that social justice is something that has a lot of different associations to it, but the way that I approach it in terms of how I want to show up to the world is fairly broad, and I hope to expand the definition of what it means to show up for one another and to have people feel seen and have a commitment to finding common ground and really leading with empathy. Because whether or not you are part of a specific program that is about widening the circle or social justice or inclusion, even giving someone a smile and asking how their day's going, I think is part of the social justice work and part of maintaining beloved community. And as I was talking about this, I had amazing support from my internship supervisors, and together we came to this sort of root understanding of allyship, and that is kind of the core of beloved community from my understanding as someone who doesn't have a particularly religious background bringing me together, but who cares about people and who knows what it's like to feel like I need to hide part of myself or can't come out in my full self into different situations. And so while I don't have the same stories as people of color, for example, I can relate to seeing the LGBTQ affirming flags to their experience of seeing the Black Lives Matter banner. I can find the place in myself where I wanted to be seen and held and find ways to care about other people's initiatives, even if it might not directly benefit my own, because I recognize that we're in this together. I also want to acknowledge that I believe any community of people, particularly those who reside on stolen land, as most people do in the United States, have continual and necessary growth edges in order to build and maintain this beloved community. But I do think that, and I think UUCB is not exempt. However, I think that this piece of building relationship is an incredible resource for that journey. And it's something that has made me feel braver in order to share things such as being a disabled 21-year-old. And I think that a lot of this is really fostered through things such as our congregation's covenant and the UU principles, where there's a foundation that's created in order to practice these incredibly vital skills for justice-centered community, asking for help, taking accountability for harmful impact, building and sharing learning. If you have people who you know will take you as you are, even when you're imperfect, it provides a really, I think, rare in some ways container for admitting when you're wrong and for ways that you want to learn more and expand yourself. And this is sort of the part where I really wanted to have some sort of printout or resources or inclusive language guidelines to give, but I realized that my takeaways during this time weren't something that I could put in a piece of paper and hand off and then leave. And that I really realized I have grown quite fond of you all. And I would rather commit to remaining in community. And that while I do see the growth that UUCB is working towards and the places that there's always room to continue, I think that the piece of relationship building is incredible. And I think that it's something that is an alternative framework to approaching being in a political climate, a cultural climate, an economic climate where there is a variety of injustice. And so instead of giving you a handout, I wanted to tell you that I want to keep showing up for you all, and I hope that that can be mutual. And I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for modeling that there is a space here for the unseen stories, that there are people that are working towards including the parts of people that they may not feel comfortable sharing yet. And I hope that this can expand our understandings of justice, of community, and frame finding common ground with issues that may not speak directly to our personal stories. I hope to continue sharing and expanding my learnings and building these relationships with people, and I hope you'll do the same. Thank you for sharing your chocolate. I wanted to now just sort of open things for questions. If there's anything that resonated with people or anything that I can clarify, I kind of wanted to give my spiel and then really just open it for us all to be in conversation with one another. So if there's anyone, I'm looking at both Zoom and in person, I just sort of wanted to hold some space to talk about these ideas. Yes?
I'm wondering.
Hello.
I want to say how you guys are share. And I haven't heard some of what you shared are ideas that I haven't heard before. And I was especially moved by your acknowledgement of the power and also the nuance that it brought to it, that in some ways parts of ourselves are visible, and there are other parts of ourselves that are either hidden, consciously hidden, or just invisible. And I also wanted to say that I think that in some ways, the first time that I experienced in my life that I would be welcome and fullness of being here as just here, but beautiful and liberating. So I really appreciate your thinking through this and sharing the richness of the dimensionality that you bring to this idea.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Someone in person was sharing that they have, Andrea, I believe you said was your name, that feeling like you can come and bring yourself and your full being into things is something that they've also witnessed here at UUCB. And they also shared some very sweet appreciations about some of the ideas that I've shared today. So thank you very much.
So Charlie, one of the things that I've noticed over time, and some of my friends there in the room know this story, that I welcome on the welcome table. You know, we're in Cordell and I are in Maryland right now, but you know, welcoming at the welcome table. It used to be if a person of color, an African American newcomer came in, all the white people would pop up like meerkats, and everybody would look at me like, did you see? Did you see that there's a person of color has walked into the church? And now when when an African American person comes in, I mean, I get knocked over because everybody just runs to, be welcoming and everything. It's not all on me. And so I've just seen so much transformation and love and connection and beloved community taken so seriously by my beloved friends there that it's why I'm still at church, 3,000 miles away. So, so yes, just wanted to share that.
I appreciate it. I think I saw a hand in the back.
I'm thinking about myself as a family member.
Thank you very much. Someone was sharing, thinking back to where they were at 21 and kind of what it means to bring different parts of ourselves at this age. Yes?
I like the use of your word root. I used it once. I just remember it stayed in my mind, and I thought it was of course the tree, the root, the growth, but the root. I like looking for the roots of our community. What's that about? It's mysterious. It would be a nice discussion in itself, I think. So hang on to that root. I'm kind of hanging on to it with what I planted. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
So maybe that's what I discovered.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone in person was sharing that they liked the language of finding roots and using that as a means of articulating beloved community, and then shared that they felt planted. And I think that that is more beautiful language to be including. So thank you. Marcus?
Another comment about language. I just appreciate one of the things, one of the threads of our conversation over the past few months has been, how do you take these academic ideas and the way that we have an academic discourse about identity, and one of the words that was sort of underlying this whole topic was intersectionality, that you managed to do without actually using it. Like, and that was the idea. That how do you talk about this stuff that comes out of the head and into the body, into the relationships? And you're doing it, and I just think that that's a high bar, actually, to be able to talk about this stuff that in a way that's very human, right, at a human level. So really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And you are exactly right. When I began kind of thinking about what I wanted this talk to look like, I did start with all the very heady kind of intellectual, what's the lingo I know, what kind of ideas do I want to bring in? But then one of the things that I came to Marcus with at the beginning of my internship is really wanting to get away from that intellectual space and make sure that I'm maintaining my value of being able to find that common ground and be able to talk with anybody, even if we might not have the same background or understanding on things. And it was a really valuable process, actually, to be like, okay, here's this sort of buzzword almost that is told and spoken about to the point you kind of forget what it actually holds and means, and how can I practice talking about that without naming it. So I feel very seen in this moment, and I hope that landed for others as well. Yeah, thank you. We have two hands here. I'll start in the back and then work up.
I just hope you continue to maintain your relationship with us, Charlie, very, very much. I think it will be so fruitful for us, and I'm so glad you've come. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you. And I really do want to maintain that relationship. If I didn't have a degree to finish, I would just stay here. Sheldon?
Yeah, as an American Studies major, my major in college, how do you have thoughts on the intersection of American culture and UU beloved community?
Mm.
And do they intersect, or are they opposites? I know, I'm gonna ask you to answer that. I'm just curious, because you have that academic, it's another way to approach the same issue that you, but perhaps less personal. Anyway.
I am absolutely happy to speak on that. So Sheldon, a fellow American Studies major in college, was asking kind of what the relationship is between American culture and UU values. And I think that is a really good question. There's some laughter in the back of, is it the same? Is it the opposite? What's happening there? And if I'm being real, I think that this speaks to some of the growth opportunities that I've witnessed at UUCB, and that's not something that I necessarily was going to include in this container, but I do think through that lens, it's important to note a lot of the kind of facets of American culture that I have seen, and I try and specify that to the United States, because I think that even just the word America can mean a lot of different things and can include a lot of people that might not be represented within the United States or within our kind of cultural specificity. I think that UU and UUCB has a lot of potential for kind of engaging in the work. And that is something that is distinct from some of the pillars of how I've perceived American culture, because I think that in the United States, given the colonial history of our country, there can often be this, whether it's conscious or unconscious, effort to not name things and to kind of keep things invisible to a degree. And I think that because this is a space that, at least as of now, is predominantly white, we all carry some of that, right? We all carry those unconscious biases or those things that we've been told are sort of how the world works or how our country functions. And that's something that I think shows up because we are still here. We are in America. We are in some facet of it as we exist in this space. However, because there is a set of principles, because there's a covenant, because there are really true and loving relationships that I have witnessed and been a part of here, I think that I feel more hope about how to confront those issues and how to find them and assess them and know that we can come together and know that having those issues does not mean we're bad or we're horrible or we're failing, but we, as the people who are currently alive in this day, in this moment, have a responsibility for the kind of history of the spaces we come in and what we bring with that. So I'm not sure if that helps sort of answer your question, but I'm happy for follow-ups and things. Another hand in the back.
Yes, I'm Ms. Jim. Speaking of American culture, a large part of our culture consists of people for whom social justice warrior is an epithet.
Mm.
And when I first became aware of that, I think there was a This American Life segment about it, and I was just astonished. I mean, I could understand being indifferent, but to actively make part of your identity the idea that I'm against social justice.
Mm.
Do you have any thoughts about how does that happen?
Mm.
Going on in people who make that choice?
I think that's a great question. Someone was highlighting that another facet of American culture is this sort of not only indifference, but aversion to people who might call themselves social justice warriors or might be bringing themselves into this work. And I think a lot of it comes down to people, and I can't speak for everyone, but from where I sit, I think that there's a piece of people not wanting to be uncomfortable and not wanting to sign up that part of being in relationship, part of leading with love, part of being in community is facing discomfort for the better of the larger group. I think it's something that if you do have kind of the social advantages that I mentioned, you're told that those aren't social advantages. You're told that they don't exist. And so when you hear these people going, oh, they actually do exist, I think that there can be a natural like, oh no, I'm not doing anything wrong. I want to be further from this. And I think it also can stem from insecurity and some other spaces of kind of marginal identity. Like I know, for example, one of the ways that I have witnessed that sort of aversion come up is in regards to LGBTQ plus rights. And something that I have grown to understand from some of the readings I've done and people I've learned from is that sometimes when people look at someone living their truth and in their joy and in their happiness, it is reminding you that you might not be doing that or that we might not be doing that in ourselves. And that can feel scary or that can feel like it's a personal attack. It's like, oh, I feel like I need to hide parts of myself because of these sort of American ideals, whether they're named or not. And I'm watching someone else live unabashedly. Like, what does that mean? How can I do that? Why are you doing that? That's not fair, kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of there. I think there's a lot of nuance, and also because we are becoming, at least from my understanding, there's more polarization that's sort of existing in terms of how people look at their beliefs, their political beliefs, their religion, their culture. Sometimes it can feel like if someone is disagreeing with you or the social justice is being like, hey, there's this thing maybe you're not seeing, or this thing could be harmful, it can feel like it's a rejection of your own culture or your own upbringing. And I think that's really complicated. And that's sort of where that piece of relationship comes back is if things are important to us and we have these values that might not match one another, but we both have that passion, where can we find the sort of middle ground there? Does that help answer your question? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now some of us have to go to the choir.
Yeah, understood. Understood. Yes.
I just wanted to, I think the other thing that comes up to mind for me around that is when people have lived lives where they're not exposed to all different kinds of people. They're not exposed to different kinds of food and music and languages and different ways of doing things, then it's much easier to write whole groups of people off.
Absolutely. We kind of lose that piece of humanity. Yes. Enjoy choir. Yes.
So I want to take here's the question. Are Republicans social justice people? Now, just a second. If you're a Republican, you have an idea about how it should be, which is what the other side has too. It's just different ideas. And so, I don't know, the question of judging this is not appropriate to me. It's like there's way more to be understood behind this. That's my comment.
Thank you. There was a question asked about if Republicans are doing social justice and if that is a kind of means or argument of social justice, if there are people who have certain beliefs in a way things should go that might be different from the sort of predominant associations with kind of social justice values. Because again, that's a very kind of big umbrella. I honestly think it's more complex than that if I'm to try and answer. As you mentioned, I think that there are absolutely people out there who are registered as Republican who are doing social justice work in the world. And I think that it depends on how you define social justice. But I think just people are more complicated than that. I think that a political affiliation can only go so far in terms of kind of day-to-day efforts in the world. And one thing, at least from my sort of government background of things, the distinction that I have seen in sort of more Republican spaces versus more progressive spaces is this whether or not and how to include the lens of collectivism and the lens of community and being in something together. I feel like from what I have learned, which again, I have much more to learn and grow, but I think there can be an emphasis on personal rights, personal freedoms, how we can move through the world in a way that is comfortable, that is a little more prioritized in Republican spaces. And while absolutely people are entitled to their beliefs, I don't know if that sort of means of moving through the world is in line with my understandings personally of social justice, that work to find that common ground and understanding, even if you might not have the same walks of life or same kind of priorities in terms of what you want from your voting, for example. Does that help clarify? Is there any follow-ups? I'm seeing questions come up and down. Would you like
All right,
to?
I think it's Zoom. I think it's the Zoom people time. So we'll share the space. I know I'm so obnoxious. Sorry, room. Cordell, did you have anything that you wanted to share? You're on mute.
First of all, I'm enjoying the perspective that Charlie brings and articulates so well. So I'm just enjoying that. I do have thoughts, but of course, I think that I'm more interested in the community, sort of processing through these particular things. So actually, no, I just want to say I'm appreciating what I'm hearing and nodding the whole while and very grateful, Charlie, that you feel the willingness to continue in relationship with us, and it's reassuring for those of us who are, way many decades down the road to have young people come in, one, just because they're young, and then two, with such insight and vision and willingness to come in and contribute to this thing that we think is so important. So that's kind of where my mind is right now. And with respect to the deep weeds of some of these questions, I don't want to get us off the path. So,
Well, thank you.
but I'm enjoying this. Thank you very much for being here and doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And I have one more thing to say, and it's a little controversial, is that we use euphemisms. Trans, black trans, white trans, Asian trans being murdered in the streets. Why is that called social justice work and not finding murderers? And I mean, why is that under this label of social justice? The terrorism and murder get social justice, but if a white person's baby is killed, it's murder. How come we're using euphemisms of DEI when everybody knows we're saying Black people, you're not smart. We just let you into these systems. It was a pass. You haven't earned it. All these euphemisms, we got to be careful. And that's my problem sometimes with the words social justice in a spiritual setting. When people are being terrorized, when people are being oppressed, it's social justice work, not human being work. Because if somebody else's child that was happening to, there would be all kinds of different labels on that. So we got to be careful, which I know because Charlie, you and I have talked. I mean, I don't like that word. I understand how we have to use it, but it is a euphemism for how are we treating each other as human beings in the world. That wasn't really a question. It was a rant, but not really a question.
You're entitled.
I think it's absolutely relevant and a worthwhile contribution. I don't know if I would call it a rant, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe there were, another question back there.
Just a comment. I was trying to, sir, I don't know if it's Matt.
Matt,
Oh,
yes.
Matt. Oh, I know Matt. I was thinking about this, I was trying to solve this problem too, is like, how come I hate people who are for Trump? I'm gonna mention his name. And I was working with myself on that sort of reason reflection, and I realized that what Trump does is he reaches out to people and he's charismatic, which means he creates this energy that people can project themselves onto him. There's something really dynamic going on there. And that's why he's grabbed hold of the so-called Republican Party, and then there are people that are segmented off. But anyway, he has this kind of, it's almost like a honey that he's oozing, and they honey back in. It's like a bee, right? I hadn't thought of that before, but it sort of works, the beehive. It's sort of a beehive. And I then could understand that. If I encounter a person, I mean, we all are affected by that charisma. In fact, you have charisma, by the way.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Your youth and your vitality and yet your poignant story of and your intelligence, as my friend adds, certainly. But you're also your poignancy because you introduced it. The vulnerability. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. All right, but anyway, so that beehive phenomena is why we now say Republicans, and we're not really talking about Republicans as much as we're talking about this phenomena that's happened, which has been unusual in our. It's happened before, we say, but it's been very unusual, the kind of language he freely throws out, creates this, oh yeah, I swear at home too, if you want to call somebody, oh, but he's doing that up front, so that's more like me, So anyway, that I think is, the Republican Party has been redefined, so we could say, are they for social justice? No, they're not. They're for order, they're for similarity, they're hanging on, each to his own kind, which is the kind of thing that's come down through our Christianity too. There are different words saying we have values, we're people of the faith, they're not, all those things. Anyway, I know. I ran into that.
This is a conversation. I welcome all of the contributions.
Is that Kathleen? Kathleen and I ran together. Cynthia Asperides has a question here on Zoom. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Actually, yeah. Okay. Actually, it's me, Carrie.
Hi, Carrie.
I want to know, given that I was once 21 and my daughter was once 21, how you have become so deep at 21. I mean, did you grow up in a family where these kinds of issues were discussed at the table? I'm just kind of blown away by your depths and I mean, maybe this sounds like an insult, but you're only 21 years old and
pretty ageist.
Pretty, yes, whatever. whatever I'm being, I don't care. I just am wondering, how did you become this person?
Big questions. But I am happy to speak to it. First of all, thank you. No offense taken for my age. I still have a lot of humility in terms of how I move through the world, given the years I've had around the sun. In terms of how I came here, I think that some amount of it was definitely having family growing up that would talk about this, but I think the bigger piece is living a lot of it. I grew up with a single mom, and she had me pretty young, and it was just her and I moving through the world for most of my life. And so I was confronted with issues of class. I was confronted with issues of gender and of alternative family styles. And I also, given my own sort of heart and values, when I came into the Berkeley school system and there were school sanctioned protests, I was like, oh, what is happening here? And then I wanted to learn more. And so it's been a really complicated process because it's gone from quite a bit of, I guess, childhood instability that had me grow in some unique ways that I might not have signed up for, but I'm grateful for. And then also coming to terms with the advantages I have in society because of my skin and because I'm a white person. And so going from, I've struggled in these ways in my youth, I carry these social advantages now, and then further being confronted with, I have, oh, marginal identities also, and having those all exist within myself, I needed to make some sense of it somehow. And it happened that my sort of academic and career passions are really aligned and maybe informed by that history. But I think it's allowed me to take these things that have impacted me really personally and engage with them from a variety of perspectives, from doing readings, from attending talks, to talking with my friends, to talking with people in my community who might be 30 years older than me. That is something that I have always really valued, is having kind of cross-generational relationships. Because I just think that there's so much to learn from other people. And if I can take just a crumb of what someone's shared with me and digest it and sit with it, and then bring in that idea with someone else in the future, I think I'm doing exactly the work I would like to be. And so, yeah, I think it's a mix of things. I find it really surprising that I didn't have a lot of background with UU, because when I first came on as childcare, I wanted to make sure that I could like walk the walk. And so I looked into the principles and the values, and I did my reading. And I'm like, okay, if I'm going to be doing childcare for these kids, like, what do I need to know? And I was really like, this sounds like me. This sounds like values that I have, and have just walked through the world, like trying to find other people who have them through conversation, through spending time together. But I hadn't had a container where there was people who had agreed on purpose to the same values that I had just sort of come into. And that, I think, has, for the first time, allowed me to feel more confident articulating all of the things that I'm thinking all the time. Because I don't spend a lot of time, at least in recent years, kind of talking to people in this capacity. Being at the front of a room is not the place that I have been or would see myself right now. But everyone that I have talked to this summer has been just so warm and kind and interested, and asked great questions and provided great insights, that I wanted to offer the same. And I think it's an ongoing process.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm a lot older than you are, but no wiser. However, over the years, I've been involved in a lot of organizations, PTA, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Democratic Center, things like that. And these organizations all have similarities as an organization. And they do always have a purpose. The Cub Scouts for the boys, Democratic Central Committees for Democrats. And each and every quarter of the nice and mystic Shriners, they have their charity for children, particularly burn children. And it's
Question.
just to tease out all the differences. Certainly our organization, say beloved community, we're looking to articulate some of the things we read and we're looking to grow. But any organization of people have a lot of characteristics in common.
Thank you for sharing. Was there a question on Zoom that I heard?
Are you able to rephrase the sharing, Charlie, that just happened for the Zoom people?
Yes, absolutely. Someone in person was talking about their own involvements in different groups and saying that among those communities that sort of have at least if I understood it correctly, that have sort of a passion and drive, that there tends to be a lot of similarity within those people and within those communities. Yes.
And Charlie's aunt, and I just wanted to say that it's been amazing watching both of them, Star and I, living Charlie this past year. It's been like almost making me tear up, just amazing growth and just into the world and finding this mind, body, spirit connection. The heart is the spirit, and just that I just see that. So that's, you know, we talked about the heart the other day, and just that is, it's just really, really beautiful.
Thank you so much. My aunt is here with us today, and she is amazing, and we've been very close for a long time. She is like the closest chosen family I have. We're basically blood. And she was just telling me that she's proud of me. And then Helen, I think your hand was also raised. Helen has been one of my internship supervisors, as well as Lonnie and Marcus, during this time, and I have just felt so supported by the three of them. And Helen was just speaking to what was my goal of this presentation, so I'm really relieved to hear it, that I have left something with this community, even if it might not be a piece of paper, or even if I might need to go back to school this Friday. But that I hopefully through this dialogue have left things with people and can come back to it. And I really appreciate you. articulating that idea of being seen through story and holding the stories in ourselves. I think, you know, we're all in this together this was the first time I've tried this sort of format out. I'm talking about my story and using the language of story, and it's kind of because of the warmth and trust that I've experienced here at UU that I felt comfortable to explore that thing that was new. And I feel just really warm and fuzzy that I am met and feel like hopefully it's engaging with people. Thank you. I want to make sure I'm looking at Zoom also. Is there anyone who has any questions or anything? Oh, claps. Thank you. I'm getting Zoom applause.
Thank you so much. Thank you so very much, Charlie. It's been a joy. It's been a joy.
Thank you, Charlie. You are something else again. You inspire me to be a better person.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, everyone. Really, I appreciate all of your time here today.
Thanks so much, Charlie. Thanks for the summer with us, and we'll be excited to welcome you back with open arms in December when you're back on school break. So come on back.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all for being here. See you in service shortly. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone on Zoom. Thank you, Curry, for that wonderful question. And talk to everybody. Take care.
See you at church. I wish.
I'll be at services. Yeah,
I know.
Bye. See you at
Bye.
services. Bye.
Aw. Thanks so much for being here, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, Lana. Thank you.
Well done,
Bye,
Charlie.
All right, darling. It was brilliant. Wonderful.
So, drink water and breathe.